Hello, and welcome to the Walk Weekly Podcast. I'm here with Ernest J. Robinson, our co-host, and of course, I am Walter Latham, the host. And today we want to just speak briefly about the Trump's cabinet nominations. And there's a few up there. I mean, I guess if you take account, maybe 10 of them, all of them are not qualified, with the exception of one. But we want to look at the ones with the most controversy surrounding their nominations.
I think some of his statements are a little disingenuous as far as him kind of backtracking on what was previously said. I mean, for our viewers and listeners, Pete Heck says, did serve as an officer in the military, has deployed, etc. But again, most recently was a host of a Fox News station and show that he had. And questions or the statements that he has made about women either not serving in combat roles, I think are sorely out of touch with what is happening within our military since Civil War. And especially with the progress that the Department of Defense has had over the past 70 years. That being said, his statements are clearly out of touch, very much disingenuous. I think he probably does still have some of those particular beliefs, but I think some of his other character things that will come up throughout the clip and that came up during his hearing are probably just as glaring or that we should have a lot more caution about.
But I think that the guy, they mentioned he's an alcoholic, he's a wife beater, he's a cheater. What do you think about? I personally think, and I have make a definite. I can't say definitely that he's all of those, but usually we have an accusation of alcohol, drunk on the job, or it could be just smelling alcohol on the job, right? So and wife beating and cheating and stuff like that, they need to prove it to me. It's not proven. If it's not proven, then I don't think it should be a part of the conversation.
Well, I mean, so there are affidavits and an account of his alcoholism. And matter of fact, let me make it the thing about these type of positions is that there shouldn't be a question of character for those who hold the highest office. And I think that what has happened is those lines have been skewed so much. I mean, again, right now on Monday, for the very first time in history, there will be a president-elect or president sworn in that is a convicted felon. Mind you, less the fact that there are 34 convictions and there were 2 other indictments that will not necessarily see the courts at least for the next 4 years, okay, or the foreseeable future, if at all. And so when we're talking about someone who has displayed behaviors of violence, alcohol abuse, or substance abuse, regardless of the substance itself, misogyny, and I use that word kind of loosely because I think sometimes it's abused, but just, gender discrimination, I would say. That should not, that if anyone holds those type of attributes, shouldn't even have been considered for some of these particular positions, because the very individuals who are our SE or our senior executive staff, our GS-15s and GS-14s, and matter of fact, any of our GS employees, regardless of how high up they are, that carry clearances and everything else, their character is of the utmost importance. And
absolutely, I would think so.
Yes. So yeah, I think that what we're looking at, I mean, it looks surreal.
Well, I would have to say, I think that the bar is set very, very low because he's not using qualifications. Meaning, President-elect Trump is not using qualifications; he's using loyalty.
Yes.
the person out there that supported him and believed in his lies and stuff of that nature, those are the people he's surrounding himself with. He's not making, notice one thing before we proceed, is that he's not making the mistake that he made last time by going out and getting people that have the qualifications that are not necessarily loyal, neutral as far as he's concerned. They're just doing their job. But if they don't kowtow to what he wants, then they're out. Like General Mark Milley, General
Mattis, Mattis.
Yeah, Mattis.
Yeah,
right, Mattis. Yeah, Jim Mattis. So people like him, he's shying away from. He doesn't want those type of people. He wants people that first and foremost are loyal to him.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily someone that's qualified for the position. The qualification seems to be loyalty.
Yeah, which is a horrible road for us to go down. But I think what's most important, and I was gonna hold this to the end, but I while we're watching these and having these discussions, and as the coming days come from the inauguration and it passes, and finally everyone is seated within their positions, which takes some time. It can be within the first 100 days. That it's up to Congress to do these. A president can nominate anybody that they want. It's up to those that we have elected to office to being able to actually confirm. So therefore, it's up to the people that may disagree, regardless of what side of the aisle a person may be on, regardless if you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican, that you contact your member of Congress, your representative or your senator. And if you have a displeasure, then of Congress, contact your member of Congress, contact your senator to influence them to not confirm, like make the president nominate somebody else. Because that's the control that we have. This is a part of the, and I don't mean to divert too much, but this is a part of the checks and balance that we do have. Like we have the three branches of government, but we are an extension of one of those of the legislative branch, because we have to elect. Actually, we're an extension of the executive as well as the legislative branch, because we elect those to office who are going to do the confirmation. So it's not as though the president, regardless of who he or she may be, has full autonomy to hire those individuals. They simply can make a nomination. And so therefore, it is up to the people to influence their member of Congress to actually say, hey, no, wait, we need somebody else to be able to kind of focus on these particular areas. And so therefore, that becomes a checks and balance. But when we oftentimes defer our power, these are the results that come about.
Absolutely.
This is a fascinating last couple of days with these these hearings. Very fiery, and in some cases, not a lot of substance. So that's one of the most disappointing pieces. Yeah. So then one of them, they're asking questions, Hexa, about basically almost like Army Soldier of the Year questions, like, what rounds are used in the M4? What's the maximum effective distance of a Mark 19, or just random soldier questions that actually have very little to do with the overall duties of the Secretary of Defense. So yes, it's important that we know what type of munitions that we're using and what type of weaponry our soldiers are carrying and things of that nature. But the overall day-to-day contracts that we have and the numbers as it relates to violence in the military. We have terms like IPV and MST. The IPV is intimate partner violence. MST is military sexual trauma. When you have a nominee who has made disparaging remarks against women, and it's, matter of fact, I didn't even talk about the whole situation about diversity, equity, and inclusion, where they're oftentimes weaponizing that it, from what I've seen more so on the side of the GOP, that becomes concerning if you're having someone who is going to be the Secretary of Defense, and they're supporting those type of notions. It's not
the biggest. Yeah, go ahead.
The biggest part of the budget in the United States, hands down.
That's right.
Yeah, hands down.
Yep, military.
The military budget is the largest budget that there is, which also then begs the question to why the members of the military are paid so little. Because
no,
go ahead.
Yeah, but they rather buy the fancy weapons and all that, but instead of taking care of the personnel. That's always been the case, though. From what I've heard and read. Right?
It has. I mean, in the military, a lot of people think that we're rich. We're the furthest from it. I think there was, because I don't recall seeing this in the hearing, but again, I didn't watch it its entirety, so I could be mistaken. But there's roughly about 20 some, there's tens of thousands, right? I think roughly about, there's tens of thousands of active duty service members who are currently on food stamps. I have to get the actual number, but there are a lot of, and these are typically your lower enlisted, and that lower enlisted would be between E4s and E1s, and you're talking about individuals who are anywhere between the ages of 17, typically between the ages of 17 and about 22, 23, that fall within that E1 to E4 range. Where
you say E1, E4, now those are grades in the military, right?
There are grades in the military, yes. So you have E1, E1, all the way through E9. And then you have O1 on the officer side through O10. And then on the warrant officer side, which we're not going to go through all of this, but there's one officer through W1 through W5, which is the Chief Warrant Officer 5. And they are officers where they actually make a little bit more. Officers in general make more than enlisted, but enlisted is oftentimes the ones who are doing a lot of the work. But I digress. But even the conversation that we're having right now, some of that could have been a part of the discussion during his hearing and testimony, to being able to talk about some of those disparities. How do we make sure that we have sustainable living for our service members? How do we prevent, again, MST, IPV, suicide rates, as well as the recruiting standards and things of that nature? Like, how are we going to bolster that and support our recruiters that are out there? How do we support our drill instructors or any of our trainers in the respective branches of service, to include our Space Force, our Air Force, our Army, our Marines, our Coast Guard, our Navy, our sailors? How are we, what are we doing in that? What does he plan to do to address those things? And I think that was a missed opportunity.
Good. As a member of the military, I see what your opinion of him is, but I did see a clip wherein there were some veterans supporting him.
Yeah.
Marching outside, supporting him. And I don't understand that. Why would they support him? But then again, the military, the general population, right? You got some for and some against. So that only falls into that. Can't satisfy everybody, right?
Right. So when it comes down to that, I think sometimes there's a level of conflation. While I can acknowledge, celebrate, support your efforts while you were in combat, right? While you were in service, right? Because there was nothing spoken ill about his service, right? At least, for all I know, he got an honorable discharge. He served in combat. He served as an officer. He was a leader within there. Some of the things that he talked about as far as helping some of his international soldiers that were there or foreign soldiers that were able to gain their citizenship under his command. There are things within his military service that are celebratory. that are outside the scope of his personal life. Because if we're only taking the snapshot of the things that he accomplished in the military, that may be something that we can applaud. But this is a totality of the person who is being nominated for Secretary of Defense. And so therefore, there is no parsing of his actions at home with his, because he fathered a child, at least based upon what Senator Kane was saying, that he fathered a child while he was still married.
Oh,
so he has a child outside. Yeah. So he has a child outside of his marriage. And one of the things that Senator Kane was drilling down on was the fact that you stood before the altar, swore an oath to your wife, to God, and to all witnesses that were present, that you were going to fulfill whatever vow that you stated. And then you broke those vows. And the parallel was the fact that you're going to, if nominated, you're going to stand before witnesses and you're going to swear an oath to being able to uphold the position that you're nominated for, but you show a lack of character to being able to uphold the things you said that you're going to do. And that's where Senator Kane was going. And I think from what some people, again, the conflation is that we're trying to protect this war hero. We're trying to protect. No, we have a person who's going for a job, right? And they have character flaws, and they have a pattern of breaking away from the things that they said that they're going to do. And that is problematic, and it should be called out. And it was just hopefully that there's enough individuals in the House and in the Senate to have the intestinal fortitude not to move forward with this nominee. But we'll see.
Right. Yeah, well, that decision will be made this week, I believe.
It will.
Okay, so I heard that he had enough votes. He already has enough votes. Just a matter of formalities, you know? That's what I understand.
Yeah,
okay,
they had enough. They've had, so the GOP has had enough votes to nominate a speaker of the House, and we've seen them go through round and round of votes for that as well. So,
yeah, but prior to Trump endorsing Mike Johnson.
Yeah. So I mean, but I'm just saying, even when I was talking about with Mike McCarthy, and then even that when they had Congressman Johnson. Not Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson.
No, the congressman from Ohio. But anyways.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
He got voted out. So, yeah, McCarthy get voted out. The next speaker got voted out. So we've had 3 speakers in 3 years. I mean, no, not 3. I mean, 2 different times. But, I mean, they've had 3 different speakers. So
a couple of the other picks. All right. And the second person was Pam Bondi. What do you think of Pam Bondi, man?
So this one was, I think, one of the weakest of the ones that I saw. Not to sit there and say that it's the absolute weakest, right? But the notion that she answered the first 2 questions were yes or no questions, right? And she answered them negative, in the negative, like she's in that no, and then every other yes or no question she just tap danced around. And that part, as the senator noted, or the congresswoman noted, is disturbing. To not even be able to say that, yes, he lost the election.
He's not going to accept that.
I mean, no, he's not. But that's not but see, that becomes the issue about the impartiality of that particular office.
Absolutely.
Not being able to be impartial when it comes to the law or when it comes down to jurisprudence. The inability to be impartial while giving testimony is a glaring notion that she does not exhibit the ability to be, especially not to being able to do it behind closed doors with the president-elect. And the Attorney General office has to be able to prosecute every person in this country, to include the president of the United States.
Correct.
Now,
if you take the notes from Nixon time,
mm-hmm.
when Nixon was impeached, they were going to jail him if he didn't leave voluntarily.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
And probably had enough votes to being able to not only impeach, but remove him from office.
Correct.
Now, that is a more or less of a side note, right? Because that showed a time frame where there were enough individuals in Congress that sit there and said that no one is above the law. And the fact that the people were owed that. And I think just by sitting there saying that, like, everyone that is in Congress, the president of the United States, and to a degree, the Supreme Court, but just the other two branches of government, they work for you and I. They work for the people, but we don't view it that way. We don't view it that those are our employees, that those are the individuals that we sent to those offices to make those particular salaries, regardless of what they make. I don't care if they take $1, or I don't care if they take the whole amount. It doesn't matter. We sent them there to work for us. But when we call, no answer. When we write letters, no response.
That's correct.
Protests, no action. And part of that is because we don't know the actual power that we actually have to have an attorney, a nominee, sit up there and evade answering a simple question about whether or not someone won the election. Right? It is, again, I didn't even ask a tough question. It was just as simple as that. And we can't even get a straight answer. I think that this too, right, should be another situation where we need another nominee. And it's interesting that both nominees, Matt Gaetz and Pam Bondi, are both out of Florida. Pam Bondi was introduced by Rick Scott, Senator Rick Scott of Florida, who also was a former governor of Florida. Florida also being the home of Donald Trump, where his home in Mar-a-Lago, right, was, investigated by the FBI, a potential holding space if he were actually be sentenced and remanded to house arrest, where those files were located at. So there's a lot that even potentially, right, could even be a conflict when it comes down to prosecuting someone who was, from that state, lived in that state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a lot. But I don't know. But again, none of those things came up. None of those questions I don't think any of those questions came up in the hearing itself.
Well, she wasn't the one that was a judge that throughout Jack Smith's case, was she?
No, she wasn't a judge, but she was the Attorney General of Florida. So she was a part of the.
She was a part of. Yeah, okay.
A part of that, a part of the case against Disney World. She would have been privy to some of the information as it pertains to law enforcement being in that area, because as the top law enforcement officer of that state, that would have been somewhat of a courtesy extended to her at that time. But again, you're coming to work for somebody that's also a convicted felon. So that also, so there's so many conflicts of interest here. You're going to say that you're going to uphold the law, but that you're working for somebody who breaks the law. You would have never hired someone in your office. As a matter of fact, you're not even qualified to apply to work for the Attorney General's office if you have a conviction, especially of that.
Yeah.
I would be surprised. Now, somebody could, a Google search will probably take care of it too, but somebody can actually give some type of empirical data to actually say how many cabinet level positions are held by individuals who have felons, not mere convictions, whether misdemeanors or whatever have you. I will be curious to know how many felons work for any cabinet level position or any high level position working in the federal government. And I could safe to say that it would be out of the hundreds of thousands that work for the federal government throughout this country. I would be hard pressed, even if it was that have felony convictions and work for, because I mean, there's always an anomaly, right? There's always, it happened like 30 something years ago. It was the lowest level felony. It was, whatever case may be. It could have been, and I'm not talking about expungements. I'm talking about that you have a felony on your record, because as of right now, on Monday, when Donald Trump gets to get sworn in, I don't care what happens after the fact, he's going to get sworn in with those 34 felony convictions.
That's right.
He can get it expunged afterwards and have, which becomes another conflict of interest, right? Because whether or not will she try to expedite expungement of his record?
Well, can't she? This is a state violation. It was prosecuted by New York State. How can she supersede them?
No, she can't. But I'm just saying the attempt to do so.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, the ability to seal records, to do that. I mean, it's not like it needs to be sealed. I mean, it's public knowledge, right?
Right.
But just any of those nefarious acts, and I think that's the purpose of the matter of fact, the first two questions, right? Because they had to ask about the any sexual misconduct, any harassment that her the predecessor nominee, Matt Gaetz, was the reason why he recused himself from the nomination. That's the reason why those questions had to be asked, was because it's something that's clearly must be a thing in Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, all right, who else do we need to look at here? Let's see. There's one other person.
I mentioned Sean Duffy.
Okay.
Former
SEAN?
SEAN Duffy. And he's been nominated as Transportation Secretary.
Second. Okay. Check. I think based on that, I think the guy is pretty good. But that's just my first impression. What do you? But can you elaborate on this guy for me?
Yeah, so he's, my first impressions of Sean Duffy, former congressman, I was impressed with him as well. I think he was, his presentation, he was very poised. Although serving as a Republican, again, I don't hold that against anybody. He served as a district attorney in Wisconsin. He served as a district representative or a congressman from 2010 to 2019. What ended up happening was his youngest daughter has Down syndrome, and when they found out, so he stepped away during that time to give more support at home for his daughter. So
he gets a pass from you, then?
No, it's not a pass. I mean, I don't. His character. I mean, again, anything about his character. He's been married to his wife for 25 years. He has 9 children. He has no. There's no scandal. There's no nefarious acts. There's no. It doesn't bother me about someone who is a Republican, because it's the same way it doesn't bother someone independent. It doesn't bother me someone who, how you identify does not determine your character, right? It does not determine what actions that you take, how you make decisions, right? And I think that ultimately, where I believe that was Senator Duckworth who was speaking.
Yeah, that was her. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and for those who are not familiar with Senator Duckworth is a combat veteran who sustained injuries and sits in a wheelchair. She lost use of her left hand, and she's a WMPT.
Yeah, I think she's a double amputee, right?
Yeah, she's a double amputee. Yep,
right.
And then she lost use of her left hand. And has been serving in the Senate now. I think she's on her second or third term in the Senate. But either way, her question, obviously, very poignant and personal, obviously, to her. But I think also to him as well, as he has a child who has Down syndrome, right? And obviously you want to make things accessible and available for people and the dignity of those who are traveling, right? And so I feel that he has a inherent investment in that particular process. And during the time that he was on the Hill, again, I don't never heard of him overly siding with this or that or, whatever the case may be. I think he made the decisions that were best for his constituents in Wisconsin.
Oh, he did a job.
Yeah, he did a job. And I think effectively because of what the Department of Transportation or being the Secretary of Transportation entails is not controversial. Roads, highways, tunnels, and the airway is, everyone has to use it, right? There's no,
that's right.
So I don't see where there's not a controversy here. I think he was a strong pick. I loved his way of his candidness about himself, his family, and I think some of the things that he plans on doing in his responses. I think he was probably one of the strongest candidates that has been nominated thus far.
All right. Now, I just want to ask you because, for the audience information, and I think we mentioned this a while back, Ernest is a Capitol Hill guy. I always refer to him as a Capitol Hill guy because his jobs over his tenure has to do with, working with Congress on behalf of veterans. All right. So he has a deep insight into the workings of Congress and the people roles and responsibility of Congress. So, this is what I defer to him because he has the expertise. And as the Vote Weekly is that we strive for facts. We strive for openness to all issues. All right. We know not Republicans nor Democrats in a sense. Our show is basically apolitical. That's our mission. But then again, times have changed and we have to change with the times. So you will see us taking positions on political issues, okay? So I do want to say, we're pressed for time, but I look forward to 2025 and see how they govern. Trump is going to be sworn in shortly. I'm sure that most of all, if not all, of his nominees for cabinet positions will be approved, even though he won't have any Democrats voting. I'm quite sure you won't. If a Democrat votes for any of these guys that are not qualified, the ones that have all the controversy surrounding them, I don't see them voting for him. I think, since the Republicans will be controlling the House of Representatives, which they do, and they will now have control of the Senate. So they're going to have both houses, and it's just nothing that we can say or do. We just got to look at it and then make adjustments where necessary. But don't forget, president is 4 years, so Donald Trump is going to be there another 4 years, all right? And I think he already said he's not going to do another run, all right? So we just have to maintain ourselves. With that said, I just want to close the show, wish you guys a good MLK Day. And by the time you listen to this podcast, probably already MLK Day would have been already passed. But, we wanted to get this to make a determination. And just show y'all guys, a few of the nominees that two we don't approve of. And the last one with Duffy, that he seems like he could do the job. The rest of them, I don't see it.